Hey friends, it's Corey from Hey Let's Make Stuff, back with another sublimation tutorial. In today's video, we're going to be tackling sublimating acrylic. So I have a few sublimation acrylic blanks that are made specifically for sublimation, as well as a blank that is made of acrylic that isn't designed for sublimation. Sublimating on acrylic was one of my top 10 trends that I expected to see in 2024, and I was right. There are a lot of sublimatable acrylic blanks that are coming onto places like Amazon and other retailers. Even since I bought the blanks to make this video, I have seen so many others pop up. So if you're looking at sublimating acrylic, it is definitely very trendy and it's actually not that difficult. For this video, I have a bundle of Starry Night sublimation files for you that you can grab for free. You can grab those from my craft library at heyletsmakestuff.com/library. On that page, if you don't already have it, you can request the password. Then you can go back to that page to log in. This is sublimation file S27, and there are two ways to find it. The first is to click on the sublimation/DTF button and you'll be taken down to the sublimation section where you can find S27. The other way is to use the find function on your computer. So if you're on a PC, you can use Control F. If you're on a Mac, you can use Command F, and then you can search for S27 to find the file. Once you've found the file, you'll see three links. The first link is the download. So you'll click that link and it will download a zip with the files to your hard drive. The second link is the blog post for this video, and the third link is this video. First, let's go into the supplies that you're going to need to make all of these projects, and then we'll go into the actual projects themselves. All of these projects are prepared similarly, and you don't need a lot of supplies. Let's start with your images. So in the overhead view here, you can see that I have all 4 of my images printed already. I'm not going to go into how to print sublimation images in this post. I have it in a lot of videos. I will link to a few of those in the description, but I do have all of my images sized for my different blanks. One thing to note is that you do not need to mirror your sublimation projects when working with acrylic. All of these projects are pressed from the back, and therefore you do not need to mirror them. With images like these, it's not quite as important because the moon could go either way, but with images that are something like photos or if they have text, you want to make sure that you do not mirror your image. That's different than a lot of sublimation, so just make sure that you do not mirror that image. I also made my images slightly larger than the blanks themselves, and that way they would have a full bleed instead of having a little space around the edge. You can use any types of sublimation images you'd like for these types of blanks. I see a lot of people using photos, especially for something like this crystal clear blank up here on the front and this larger nightlight here in the back. You're going to need butcher paper, so I've got it in sheets here. You can also buy it on the roll. You're also going to need a way to secure your image to your blank. Now, normally we would use heat-resistant tape, and I have that here, and that is definitely an option. But in my tests, I found that sometimes the tape can actually imprint into the acrylic, and it's not very cute. So instead, I like using an adhesive spray. Now, this comes from Condé. Last time I checked, they were actually out of it, but Heat Transfer Warehouse has a very affordable version, which I will go ahead and link down in the description. I'm going to throw a little photo up here on the screen. Hopefully you can kind of see how that tape can affect the surface of your acrylic. So if you have the option, I definitely prefer that spray adhesive. Now let's talk about the 4 blanks I've chosen for this video. So to start, I have a little sublimatable, this is a Stanley Cup topper. So I made some of these on my laser a while back, but you can buy them and they have that sublimation coating on the back. Then inside this fancy little box here, there is a sublimation sort of crystal. I don't really know any other way to describe it. And then it has this sort of fancy display box here. I wouldn't say this is the most high quality thing. You can sort of tuck this satin back in, but it is nice if maybe you are selling something made with these blanks or if you want to give it as a gift. Then I have 2 nightlights. So the first nightlight here is sublimation specific. So it does have that sublimation coating on the back, and it has a little nightlight here that has a USB power supply. The nightlight here is only sort of a warmish light. So that is one thing that makes it different from the other one I'm going to show you. This nightlight here is designed for laser engraving, but I was able to sublimate it. You can sublimate some cast acrylic. There are some issues and we'll talk about those, but this was designed for laser engraving and not sublimation. So it doesn't actually have a sublimation coating. The nice thing about this one is that the base has multiple colors. You get like a little remote and you can turn it all sorts of colors. You can make it flash or strobe or fade. And this one is also USB powered. And then finally, you're going to need a heavy stack of books. And that's because when you heat up acrylic, it tends to warp, and placing a stack of heavy books on top of the acrylic as it cools keeps it from warping. And what books am I using today? I just got a shipment of my new sublimation crafting book. This is my 3rd crafting book, and it basically walks you through everything you need to know about sublimation. This book is absolutely gorgeous. As you can see in the overhead view, I talk about different heat presses, all the supplies you're gonna need. I have a bunch of images for you to use, and then we go into making a bunch of really awesome projects. So I have all sorts of really unique projects here, from simple mugs all the way up to more complex projects. I've got coasters, we have sublimating on metal, as well as slate. My book releases on my birthday this year, April 28th, 2024, and you can actually pre-order it now, so I will go ahead and leave that link down in the comments. Because the process for preparing all of our blanks is the same, we're gonna do those all at the same time. Let's start with our tumbler topper. So there is actually a film that you need to remove on the front side of the topper. So I'm gonna go ahead and just grab my weeding hook and pull that back. You can actually scratch the acrylic, so just be really careful if you're using a weeding hook. You can also use something like a plastic razor blade or a popsicle stick, but you do wanna make sure you get this coating off, or else it's going to ruin your project. On the back side, there is no film, and you can tell the back from the front because the back has the white sublimation coating. These are from PYD Life, and they also make a glitter version, which are really cool. I don't have them, but those have a film on both the front and the back, so make sure that you take the film off both sides if you're using that blank. Now, like I said, I prefer to use the spray on these blanks as opposed to tape. So you want to spray the sublimation side, because that's the side that we're going to be attaching to our image. So I'm gonna go ahead and put it out in front of me, just really fast, give it one little spray, just like that. You do not need a lot. You may wanna wear a mask if you're sensitive to smells and things. And then I'm gonna place it on my image. The image I gave you is square, so I'm just using part of this image, just like that. And now I'm going to set this one aside, and I'm gonna do the others exactly the same. Next up is this Sublimation nightlight. It has actually two plastic coatings on it. So it has a plastic that kind of covers the whole thing. So we'll take that off and throw it away. And then this one has a plastic film on the front and back. So I'm gonna grab it here. We'll peel up the film from the front. We'll flip it and peel up the film from the back. I have my image here, so I'm gonna go ahead and give this one a little bit of a spray. Again, just a very light spray. And then remember, you want that white side down. So I'm gonna go ahead and place it on my backing here. For this one, I wanna make sure I get that moon, just like that. For this one, I do wanna note that you will lose a little bit of the bottom of the image, so just keep that in mind when you are choosing your image. All right, that's secure on there. Let's do the next one. Next up, we have this little crystal one. This one doesn't actually have a coating on it, but I am still gonna use this spray. So I'm just gonna do a little mist there. And then I'm going to put it down on my paper here, just like that. And then finally, we have our non-sublimation blank. Because this has a paper masking, I find that my plastic razor blade that I use when I'm laser crafting works really well for removing this background. It is a bit fussy to remove one of the sides of this. This is the easy side. And then this side gave me a little bit more trouble. So let's see if I can get it off. It came off in a lot of pieces the first time I did this. Kind of get that going. You can see here that it's just not as easy as the other side. Okay, I've got it all clean. I did also find that this one left a lot of sort of sticky residue from the masking. So I am gonna go ahead and remove that using a little bit of alcohol. I did not find that the alcohol sort of created those micro fractures that it can create in some acrylic. So I'm using this. You can also choose to use something like Windex, that would work as well. So I just wanna make sure that this is clean so that when we sublimate it, we don't end up with any issues. And then like the others, I am gonna spray it with a little bit of this adhesive. Again, on this one too, you will lose this little bottom part, so keep that in mind when choosing your image. Now it's time to press our projects. I'm going to put the time and temperature for each of these up on the screen. I did quite a few tests, and these are the numbers that I found worked best. They aren't necessarily the manufacturer's recommendations, but they are the ones that I found work best. You may need to test a little bit because it may depend on your machine. It could depend on the paper you're using. There are a lot of variables in sublimation. So if you're not getting the best results, you may need to change up that time and temperature just a little bit. As far as pressure goes, I'm going for a light to medium pressure. The heavier the pressure, the more you can actually warp that acrylic, and you really don't want to do that, so go for a light to medium pressure. Now open up my heat press here, and we're going to start by placing a piece of butcher paper on the heat press. Now when you want to put this in your heat press, you want to make sure that the actual image is facing down. So you're going to flip this over, and then you want your blank to be in the center of your heat press so that it gets pressed evenly. We will add another piece of butcher paper. For this cup topper, I'm pressing it at 360 degrees for 60 seconds. I'm gonna pull this out of the press. I'm gonna immediately put the books on top of it. I don't actually use heat-resistant gloves because I'm just gonna grab the edges of the paper and pull it out kind of as a stack and then put the books on top of it. The second project is this larger sublimation nightlight. So I'm gonna pull out my drawer in my heat press here, add a piece of butcher paper. Again, I'm going to flip this over, put it in the center of my heat press, and I'm gonna add one more piece of butcher paper. For this project, I'm pressing at 375 degrees for 120 seconds. All right, I'm pulling this out and I have a second stack of books available. I'm gonna set this hot one aside here and we can take a look at the first one I made. All right, here's the first one. It turned out super cute. It's super vibrant, which I love. Let's talk a little bit about acrylic blank brands on Amazon. So this is a PYD Life brand blank. I have found that their blanks generally work really, really well for me, especially these acrylic blanks. They seem to have been able to find the sort of magic combination of a high quality acrylic and a really good sublimation coating. Let's go to the overhead here so I can show you what I'm talking about. So this is the PYD Life brand, and this is another brand. Now you can see that my image here is not very vibrant at all. And this is a really cool blank because it has like light up stuff. It's really cool, and I was really disappointed that it didn't work very well at all. This happened in every single one of my tests. I tried different papers, I tried different times and temperatures, but it basically stuck to the paper. And so, I mean, I can peel it off here, maybe, but it then ends up with sort of a sticky back. So you can see here that I can just, like, it's sticky. Plus, the sublimation doesn't look nearly as good as it does with the PYD Life brand. So blank brands matter. You may be getting terrible results, but it may not be you, it may be the brand. So if you are struggling, you may want to try a different brand. PYD Life, always been a hit for me, but there are other brands that work really well out there as well. Next up is this crystal blank. So this one you will definitely need to adjust your heat press for that pressure. This thing is almost half an inch thick, might even be a little bit more than half an inch thick, and so you will definitely need to adjust your heat press before you actually put this in there. All right, we're gonna open that heat press back up. Again, a piece of paper on the bottom, and then we'll add the blank in the center of the press. This one's kind of important to really get in the center of the press so you get that even press because it's so thick. And we're gonna add a second sheet of butcher paper. For this blank, I am pressing it at 390 degrees for 210 seconds. And while that one presses, let's take a look at this first nightlight that we made. Truly, absolutely gorgeous. It's still a little warm, so I'm afraid it might warp a little bit. You can kind of see that it's warping a little bit. You may want to use more than 3 books on a blank like this, but overall, I mean, this is absolutely gorgeous. So I have the nightlight stand here, and I can tell because I had it a little bit warped here, it still fits, but it definitely is a tight fit. And even though it's a little bit hard to see under all the lights, this has a really nice warm glow. It's really perfect for a nightlight. One of the other things I like about this nightlight is that you could probably paint the stand to match whatever you've done because this is wood. Definitely don't get paint in the groove because that's where the lights are, but you could definitely paint this to make some really, really cool products if you have a shop or to match your decor in your home. All right, let's pull this one out here. I don't know if you need to put books on top of this one here because it's so thick, but we're going to anyway. While this one cools, let's talk about our final project. So like I said, this last nightlight blank is not made for sublimation. It does not have a sublimation coating, but because it's made of cast acrylic, it does have some of the materials necessary inside of it to be able to sublimate it. While I was researching how to do this, I looked at videos from both Angie Holden and Jennifer Maker. They both did this sort of project and they had the same issue, and that was that the paper stuck really bad to the acrylic. I did it, however, and I didn't have that problem at all. I don't know what the difference is. I don't know if it is the particular nightlights that I purchased, which I will go ahead and link below, but I was able to sublimate them without too many issues. Let's take a look at the difference between the sublimation nightlight and just the regular nightlight. Obviously, there are different sizes. We have the different bases that I talked about earlier, but the biggest difference is that because the sublimation nightlight has that white coating, you get a very vibrant image. The acrylic nightlight does not have that backing, so you get a much more sort of see-through image. If you watched my video on making sublimation cutting boards, you'll see that I had the same difference between the sublimation specific cutting board and the just glass cutting board I got at the dollar store. So it's basically the same thing. Because this one has that white backing, you get a much more vibrant transparent image. And because this one doesn't, you get an image that is a little bit more see-through. All right, let's sublimate this one. I'm gonna pull out my drawer here. I'm gonna grab another piece of butcher paper here, put that on top. Again, I'm flipping this over and I'm gonna put it in the center of my heat press. I'm gonna add another piece of butcher paper. For this one, we're pressing at 360 degrees for 60 seconds. While that final one is cooling, let's take a look at the Crystal Sublimation Blank. This one is still a little hot. It's been sitting there, but it turned out really, really well. I hope you can see how nicely this turned out. I'm not gonna pick it up right now because honestly, it's really hot, but overall, I'm really, really happy with how this turned out. All right, let's take a look at this final project. So it looks really good on the paper here. And when I peel it up, you can see that, again, it has that very see-through feel. You can see through it. I mean, this is definitely a look that you could go for, but it's just not my favorite look. I do think, though, that this is a good option and it's relatively inexpensive. I don't know if you can tell from the front view here, but if I plug in the one I just made, it is not nearly as bright as this one here. I can't plug them in at the same time because I only have one plug. But this one is just so much brighter, and I think it's because it has that sublimation coating. Here they are in the dark, and you can really see that the sublimation version lights up a room a little bit better. I guess it really depends on what you want as a nightlight. Maybe the sublimation one is too bright as a nightlight and you want something a little bit more subtle, and if so, then maybe the acrylic is for you. I hope you found this video for sublimating acrylic helpful. If you are struggling with it, please let me know and I can try and troubleshoot for you, because even though it is sort of an easy process, the type of blank really does make a difference. If you found this video helpful or inspiring, I would appreciate a like. Follow my channel for more sublimation, Cricut, and laser content. I'll see you next time.